News.
Time to talk about a touchy subject. Parents do everything they can to keep their children out of harm's way, but the predators are out there. As we've learned, they're in the Catholic Church and other churches. With me is Dr. Jaime Romo. He's here this morning. He's a doctor of education. He's here with tips on keeping your child safe from abuse. And let's go back to your history. We know that of the people who were abused by priests back in many years ago, some of them have committed suicide. Some have become drug addicts and alcoholics. You wrote a book about it. You went on. I can show your picture here. How old were you when this photo was taken?
I was about 12.
You were about 12 years old. This is little Jaime Romo. And without going graphically, but what happened to you?
Well, what happens to a lot of kids is that I was adopted by this trusted, revered authority figure and groomed over a period of time. To be able to go on trips and to receive gifts and to have kind of no questions, and then little by little given alcohol and had inappropriate affection that extended, and so there's this kind of testing that goes on and grows until there's actual sexual abuse and all kinds of other things.
You talk about it in your book. The book is called Healing the Sexually Abused Heart, a workbook for survivors, thrivers, and supporters. Explain the word thrivers, if you would.
Well, thrivers is when a person is fully alive, when they're taking all of their life experience and they're not regretting it, and they're actually creating and being a mentor and a resource to heal others in their experience.
How did you decide to move on from this thing? This had to be terribly painful in your life to have been abused by such a trusted figure. How did you decide, I'm not going to let this get me down, I've got to write a book and move on?
Well, actually, it did get me down, in a very profound way. It really, when it came up in 2002, because it was buried for an awful long time, then I had to face it, and it affected every aspect of my life. And so through the process and staying with the process and working with therapists and kind of rebuilding my spiritual life, that was my commitment. Others do take their lives. Others do self-destruct. And I know that I'm here for a purpose, and my life at this point is committed to helping to protect and promote healing.
And we know in the church it was priests who took advantage, but advantage is taken all over in different, many ways. Let's give parents some advice on how to spot those things. First of all, let's talk about communication between the parent and the child, no matter what age they're at.
Absolutely. I mean, communication is one of the three critical pieces. And communication when their kids are little, when they don't have much of a language, we really have to pay attention. When kids are saying that they don't want to go somewhere or be with someone or have a strong reaction, we have to pay attention and interpret that. When kids are older, we may confuse their resistance to talk about things as adolescence. But really, older kids, when they are abused or when they are confused about their experiences, take responsibility for it and shut down and act out in different ways. So it's really important that there's a book called Talk So Your Kids Will Listen and Listen So Your Kids Will Talk. That we have to have that open line.
Let's talk about the tips for keeping your children safe from abuse. These are very important notes that are in the book itself, such as keep communication open with your child and monitor your child's interaction with other adults and know your children's friends and their parents. This is very important, isn't it? That number 3 is very important because how many people don't really know, they may know the first name of the child's friend but not the last name or even where the parents lived. How often does that happen?
Well, that's really important. I mean, that's the second critical piece is communication, and this is what I'm calling location. Know where your kids are and who they're with, because the majority of abuse happens not only with 30% within families, but 60% with people who are known. And so we are probably more mindful. I certainly was myself when kids are little and monitoring and talking with the parents and hanging out. But as kids are older, we still need to know who's there and what they're doing, and that's where the communication piece comes back to be able to follow up and really find out.
The real predators are not out there so much on the internet. They're right around the corner. They're in the own home. It's an uncle or
it's a dangerous misconception,
or a close friend.
Because those things do happen, but the majority is we're people who we trust, who we assume that it's okay.
And let's talk about some more of these tips. We want to know who the child plays with. Ask about the games they play with friends and with adults especially. What kind of games they play. And what's for changes? You watch for changes in your child's behavior. And assess the providers very carefully. But talk about the warning signs, the kind of changes in behavior that will happen.
Well, some of them will be, physical. And certainly with younger kids, we may notice bruises or marks in their genitalia and so on. With older kids, they internalize it in their bodies. So eating patterns may change, sleeping patterns may change. their reaction to things. And that's where I said it could be confused with moodiness or things like that. But girls, look at eating disorders. That's a link that there's some trauma there.
Can parents be too paranoid these days, Doctor?
Well, I mean, there are kind of helicopter parents when people can just try to be everywhere and know everything, and that can be limiting. That can make it difficult for a kid to learn from their experience and become more independent, which is what we want. So at this point, though, since we've probably fallen on the side of assuming that everything's okay, it's probably okay to be a little bit more paranoid than not.
Thank you very much. And a lot of parents, of course, assumed everything was okay. You can go to Dr. Romo's website for more information about the book. The book is called Healing the Sexually Abused Heart. It can be found on our website, fox5sandiego.com. Thank you very much. Dr. Jaime Romo, thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks for taking up this important topic.
Thanks for writing the book, too.
Okay.
Thank you. Back to you now, Shelley.
All right, gentlemen. Thanks again. Look good and feel good. Coming up, some of the hottest eco-friendly trends this fall. But first, let's check in with Heather Ford. She's hanging out in Old Town this morning. Heather?